Hello and welcome everyone. Podcast number 11 in what turned out to be a very defining week for the Premier League. Let's start off with Spurs ending their amazing 9 game run and losing to West Ham. Shannon, do you think it was just the typical derby atmosphere that the whole Spurs team got overwhelmed with? What was the reason for the defeat?
I think it was uh, like they were suffering from somewhat of a hangover after comprehensively beating Arsenal. I thought that after beating Arsenal so easily, they might uh, they just thought that West Ham would be a walkover, especially since West Ham haven't had such a good season. And West Ham were good value for their money. They were resilient. They got a scrappy goal, but then they never looked like conceding after that. So uh, they needed a bit more urgency from Spurs to finish out the game in the business season. But it seems like second season in a row, it's where they have had these hiccups where they haven't fully challenged for the title. They have been there, but they haven't been able to make a good challenge out of it into the last.
I just read an amazing stat last week where the previous game that Spurs dropped points were against Liverpool, and after the Liverpool game, this is the first game that any team has outran the Spurs team. Sid, what do you think? Is this is has this season been a springboard for future success for Spurs, or is it about time they start winning something and have something to show for all their recent successes?
Arvind, it's a combination of both things. I mean, for sure, it's a failure because Spurs have been out and about in that second place and actually not winning anything. They've been to the semi-finals of the FA Cup, and they kind of end up with that same, result at the end of
Mm-hmm.
every competition. But you have to take it as a springboard for success as going forward into the next season. I mean, they have a very amazing young squad, and all they have to do now is make sure that they want to stay. The players still buy into the philosophy and this and the ambition that Spurs have, and they don't leave for money and double the wages or teams like City who will win trophies but not through through the conventional way. So yes, I mean there's positives for sure. Yeah.
I think I think Spurs have the ability to pay higher wages as well, and Daniel Levy has done a great job in keeping them at longer contracts for low wages. So that'll be interesting to see how it
No, I
develops.
mean, I don't completely agree with you. I don't think the likes of Spurs can match what the Manchester clubs or Chelsea are doing. I mean, consider the likes of Zlatan, who getting what 350,000 pounds plus per week, and Spurs, their highest paid, their best paid player, I think, is Harry Kane, who's now getting more than 100k. I mean, the likes of Toby Alderweireld are getting 50k a week. So
Hmm.
the wages are amazingly different. So it's not you won't blame the likes of Kyle Walker wanting to leave for Man City where they can earn three times their wages. So the
True.
Spurs, I don't think, can match what the Manchester clubs are doing.
Hmm. So speaking of teams that did not drop points, we get to Chelsea absolutely mauling Middlesbrough on Monday night. Shannon, what did you make of that 3-0 defeat? How good is this Chelsea team? How well are they drilled in Conte's 3-4-3 system?
Well, if you were to sum Chelsea up in one word, the whole season you would call it professional. They were just effective from I think from the time they switched to the 3-4-3 formation, right after the defeat at Arsenal. They have just been professional how they went about the whole season, to be honest. They didn't have any European distractions, but they maximized they their opportunity, so to say,
Mm-hmm.
of the lack of games. They um, I think Conte did very well in rotating the center midfield, having Fabregas in there for the teams that he knew would play with like four,
Play a lot
five, six,
deeper.
yeah, six at the back, and have a very, very deep back line. And Fabregas, of course, with his amazing passing abilities, was just able to unlock defenses. And then for the teams that he knew that he had to match physically, he had Kante and Matic in there, allowing Hazard and Pedro and Costa to do their thing. So I have to give Conte a lot of credit. He used whatever resources he had, and uh, had a game plan, had tactics, had formations that suited to the strength of his players. And
True.
I mean, whatever you say of this season, it's been really it can show other managers, right? Like if you have the right players, right tactics, you don't have to blame the fixture list or anything of that sort. You just roll up your socks and back your players to do their bit.
The
One
one point that I caught based on what you said, so just give me 1 second, I'll bring you in. The one point that I caught that you said was having time. One thing that Fabregas said in Monday's post match interview was how they got time to work on that formation and confirm everyone's positioning, stands, and all that. Sid, I wanted to bring you in with your thoughts, and also just focus on two players who had an outstanding performance this Monday. Alonso, who I thought missed out on the team of the year, and Fabregas, who hasn't played as much, but his passing this Monday was like on a different level. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, before I touch on those two players, I think Conte also deserves great credit along with the entire Chelsea squad in keeping at it till the very end. I mean, it's very easy to slack off after a while and just say that, oh, now we've won it. But every week they turn out with even more confidence and passion and spirit. It just flows from Conte's body language into the entire team. And even today, with all the title almost confirmed, they're playing like as if it's the first game of the season and they're all hungry. So that's great to see. Coming to Alonso and Fabregas, I think Alonso going into the season was an unknown, and he's been one of the biggest surprises of the season along with David Luiz, I think. Um, I mean, going forward, I completely agree with you. Almost every attack, the first person or the second person you see in the box is Marcus Alonso, which talks so much about Chelsea's system and how they switch from defense to attack. Um, so he's done really well, and I think he's raised his stock, and he's done uh, wonders, cementing his place in Chelsea's first team squad going into next season, where they'll most likely shop for another left back. And I mean, what is there? What can we say about Fabregas? I mean, we knew what kind of player he is. Chelsea knew who they were buying, but I think uh, the only point worth mentioning here is he's still been the same or even better coming off the bench and accepting that bit part role, coming on for the last 30 minutes or for a few games and still producing the level of performances that we expect from Fabregas. and
Yeah.
and he and he's what set the record today for the number of assists, 10 or more
Mhm.
in 6 or more seasons. So I mean, he's the best.
That's an amazing stat.
He's the best assist king we know in the Premier League.
That was some stat that that threw that was amazing. And I think Chelsea will be heavily reliant on him to unlock Champions League defenses next year. Speaking of the fluidity of Conte's system, I think just kudos to the amount of times Moses and Alonso were in the opposition box today. I think that just tells you how this system can be very defensive without the ball and super attacking with the ball. And yeah, kudos to Conte for it. Speaking of the Middlesbrough team that they played, Shannon, what do you think was the reason for them now confirming the relegation? Was it just a lack of quality? I mean, they had Valdez in there, they had Negredo. They weren't unknown players, but is it just an overall lack of quality?
I think it's the same case with Sunderland getting relegated as well. It's lack of creativity, I would say, and lack of proven goal scorers, right? Negredo was a good striker in his day, but he's 32 now. And though he seemed like a shrewd signing at that time, I don't think you'd be putting all your eggs in a Spanish striker who's 32. And I can draw parallels between their season and Sunderland's, where even Sunderland had like an aging striker and no other source of goals, and that's what happens. You cannot rely on just one player to do the bulk of your scoring, and if there's no one supporting them. Uh, but yeah, it was lack of quality. I mean, there's no one in the Middlesbrough team that could have a spark. Maybe probably Gaston Ramirez, but it was far too far too little and far too rare. And as I said, they didn't have anyone up front who can put the ball in the net. There was Negredo. Rudy Gested is not known to be a goal scorer.
Mm-hmm.
So it eventually what keeps you in the league is scoring goals. They have a really good defense though, but the defense can get you only so far. You need wins in the Premier League and any league for that matter, and the only way you get that is by scoring goals, and they haven't scored many goals this season.
So you brought up Sunderland as well, and one thing that was that we can talk about both these clubs was how they have dealt with their managers. It was unfortunate for Sunderland that Sam Allardyce had to left at the beginning of August, and the England FA not making a decision soon enough didn't help their cause. But Sid, how do you sum up the manager performances at both Sunderland and Middlesbrough, where one have not sacked their manager all season, whereas the other one did it when it was probably too late?
Yeah, that's a great question, Arvind. So, talking about Middlesbrough first, I think they're one of the only clubs where manager sacking hasn't worked this season. We talk about Swansea. Paul Clement coming in, changed the way Swansea work, and they've actually performed better. They're out of the relegation zone now. Hull City, they got Marco Silva. I mean, even though they're in the relegation zone right now, the entire world is amazed by what Marco Silva has done and what he's capable of, and how he's actually gotten a dead hard team to function. Even Leicester, Craig Shakespeare, any other club that we talk about, Crystal Palace, every new manager who's come in has actually changed things for the good, except Middlesbrough. Steve Agnew came in, he replaced Aitor Karanka, I think, and Middlesbrough have just gone down from that day. So that didn't work for Middlesbrough. On the flip side, Sunderland stuck with David Moyes, and nothing from them, nothing at all. There's not one talking point from the season. But I think it was just Sunderland finally accepting the fact after 7 or 8 seasons that they need to build from the ground up. They accepted right from the beginning that we have to stick with Moyes, which good for them that they're sticking by Moyes. That they're ready to go down to the championship, start again, build again, and maybe come back stronger. So I mean, that's one way to do it, and other teams have done it. I'm not sure that they're good enough to come back immediately, but if David Moyes
Mhm.
does stick around, we've seen what kind of a job he can do. Like we saw at Everton, if he's given the time
But
So
and money.
yeah, I want to interject you guys here and would like your little bit of opinion. So David Moyes way back in August, like in the after like 1 or 2 rounds of games, he was immediately like, "Oh, we'll be in a relegation dogfight." So as a player, if your manager says things like that after 2 game weeks, what sort of confidence do you get? Or it drains any confidence that you have, right? Like, isn't it the manager's job to make sure that you're motivated? And if you hear such negativity coming from him before even like 3 games have been played, isn't that a little bit of Moyes' fault as well?
yeah, I think it's fair enough to say that talking to the media is not Moya's strongest suit. I remember at United he said things like we should play more like City, and that's just you don't say that when you're at United. It's just one of those things you just don't say, and so that was definitely one thing. And the other thing was his signings. He was known at Everton to make some brave signings, and he went to the tried and tested ones like Paddy McNair and Adnan Januzaj. That's I
I
think
don't.
those were
I'm
two
not
reasons.
sure.
What do you
I'm not
think?
sure if they were tried and tested though.
Well, I meant he went with people that he thought would be good based on who he had worked with before. What do you think, Sid?
Um, I mean, I don't agree with you guys completely about saying that to the media. I mean, Claudio Ranieri kept saying that till the last day of the season that all we're aiming for is 40 points and he won the title. So I mean, media talk is separate than what actually happens. Even if he's saying that we're fighting for relegation, the players can take that on their chin and prove him wrong. So it's about what the players actually believe that they can do. But I think Moyes did see the big picture coming into the club, that the players he had at his disposal, the kind of resources he had as far as getting money from the board and making signings was concerned. He didn't see a lot of hope, which is why he said that we'd be fighting for relegation, and that did happen. And you bring up great points about the signings that he made. I mean, his best signing, I don't know if any of us would ever remember him, or any of us even know his name. His great signing was Didier Endong. I don't think he did a single thing this season. And Javier Manquillo, a Liverpool reject, Donald Love, Papi Djoloboji, Jason Denier, just unknowns who turned out to be unknowns. He got the likes of Brian Oviedo and Darren Gibson from Everton. Nothing came out of them. He didn't have great luck with injuries. Lee Catamol, Fabio Borini, Duncan Watmore, Victor Anichebe,
Mm.
Jordan Pickford injured for most of the season. So the only player they relied upon was Jermaine Defoe, and I don't think Jermaine Defoe is good enough to solely keep you in the premiership. It's a team effort. One player can't do that. So I wouldn't put it entirely on Moyes. It's more. I think there's a bigger picture to it.
So one team that got relegated last season was Newcastle, and not only are they back in the Premier League, but they've actually gone on to win the championship. How big is this, Shannon, and how much credit goes to Rafa Benitez for sticking around after failing at Madrid?
Well, of course, our old friend Rafa Benitez. I mean, you have to give him credit for sticking around. He could have. I'm pretty sure his contract when he took over Newcastle last season would have had some sort of clause. If they got relegated, he could get a get out of jail card or something. But I mean, credit to him. He stayed. He knew that he had a pretty decent team. I mean, if you look at their squad, it's not that bad. It's pretty good Premier League quality, right? But he made some shrewd signings. He got in Dwight Gale, uh, and he just got them playing. And they were one of the more exciting teams to watch this season, if I'm not mistaken. They, I think, have the highest number of goals scored in the championship, and well, going into the final game, they were second spot and managed to get a win and pick the trophy. So it'll be good to see another Champions League winning manager back in the Premier League, make it more competitive. It'll be
Yeah.
And credit to
Um,
Mike Ashley for actually backing him up. I mean, he gave
yeah,
him
for
all the
once.
resources. Yeah, for once.
and yeah, there has been some talk of them having crunch talks about next season. I think another player that they signed on loan, Christian Atsu, who is a Chelsea loanee, has done pretty well. But what about bringing the best out of someone like a John Joe Shelby? What do you think about that, Sid? He's coaxed the best out of existing players as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's John Joe Shelby is one of those, like I put him in the same mold as someone like a Mario Balotelli or a Ravel Morrison, one of those unpredictable hotheads, but with great talent. So it was just a matter of, a good coach being able to sit him down and getting the best out of him. We all know what he's capable of. So yes, they from the start off they decided they're going to build their midfield around him, and he's been great. The fans love him for once, and yeah.
I think
So
the
the
biggest thing what Rafa Benitez did right was keep his squad. I mean, there are more than decent Premier League players, as I mentioned, right? John Joe Shelby, Mitrovic, and they could have easily left for a Premier League club, but I guess the opportunity to work under Benitez and play for a. I mean, Newcastle is a big club. They have a big stadium. They are like the probably the biggest club in the northeast of England. So he was able to keep them and have a strong season in the championship to come right back.
I think
They are
one
actually.
of the best signings, according to me, that they made was signing Matt Ritchie from Bournemouth,
Oh
and
yeah,
credit
for
to
sure. Yeah.
and and credit to Newcastle and Benitez for actually convincing him from to be able to step down from the Premier League into the Championship. We had this discussion about making him believe in the project of Newcastle, and he did, and he's been amazing for them this season. And another exciting talent that I'm looking forward to seeing next year is DeAndre Yedlin. They snapped him up, I think, from Sunderland it was, and he's been great at right back. And I think a season or two in the Premier League, and all the big clubs will be looking forward to signing him, because he's one of those very pacey right backs who puts in great crosses. So I think exciting times for some of their young players.
Nice. Newcastle United are actually one of the 20, the top 20 richest clubs in the richest football clubs in the world, which bring us to two more in that list, which is Arsenal and Manchester United.
Hmm.
So Manchester United in this season, I think Sid put out a stat which said that Mourinho and United have probably a very dreadful record against the rest of the top seven. Before we go into the game itself, Shannon, what do you think of that? Is that a way to sum up United's? Is that a way to sum up United's season this year?
Well, it's been a weird season, to be honest. It's been a season where we've gone 25 games unbeaten, the longest in United's club history in the Premier League. Yet we haven't gone above fifth, sixth spot for 6 months. We've already won one domestic trophy, but uh, we've been struggling in the Premier League. It's just been a season where whatever could go wrong has gone wrong at the wrong time. But despite saying that, I think Mourinho recognized, excuse me, a long time ago that his best chance of getting uh, the Champions League qualification would be through basically Europa League, compared to the run in that we have in the Premier League now. And
True.
yeah, I mean, though he kept saying we'll keep fighting on two fronts, we'll keep fighting till it's the last day. I think he knew personally that Europa League was the way to go, and you
But
could see it from the way he set up his teams, where we've been very efficient in the Europa League, like barely conceded goals, got away results, and just moved on to one round after another. And right now we are 2 games away from getting back to the Champions League, rather than having to get through Arsenal, Spurs, Southampton away, and Crystal Palace, who will give a tough fight because they are fighting for still not safe from relegation.
Shannon, I
So
have a counter
the
question for that. So I mean, we can go all along with Mourinho and believe that you know Europa League is the our best bet to get into the Champions League. But there was a great discussion in Monday Night Football by Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville. So the question I'd like to ask you is that, is it fair for a club like United to actually prioritize Europe over the Premier League, where where us or any top club is expected to perform in both competitions and play 60 games? Or do you think it was just the extent of injuries that we've had recently that he was forced to prioritize one competition?
I think it's the latter, and I think Mourinho is also to blame a little bit for that, and I'll explain why. We played, I think, I can't recall, but essentially the front four remained the same for the long time. The center midfield remained the same for a long time, and the injuries that you're seeing now, these small little niggles, Eric Bailly and Valencia and Pogba, they all have to stem from these accumulation of minutes, as Mourinho likes to put it. But that's where he is to blame, where he could have rotated, rested, have Tuanzebe play 4 months earlier, against a bottom half team, rather than throw him in the deep end at the Emirates. So that's where I think Mourinho's long-term game management hasn't been up to scratch, where he hasn't rotated enough, and that's why you're seeing players, being injured left, right, and center. But on the other hand, you also have to you also have to see that some of the injuries have been freak, like Jones and Smalling, they injure each other at the England training session. What can Mourinho do about that? And when both of them were in like decent form, Marcos Rojo and Ibrahimovic both snapped their ligaments in the same game. Like how often? Like what are the odds of that happening? In for the to the same
So
team, never mind in the same game, right? So
so
that's
yeah,
when, yeah.
it's
But as Sid pointed out, that if earlier in the season, during the unbeaten run, we had games against Stoke, Burnley, even Liverpool, Arsenal, where we dropped points. Now there was easily 8, 10, 12 points that could have been gained during those games, and if you add those 8, 10, 12 points, you'd be closer to Spurs, or even higher than Spurs, than languishing in fifth.
yeah,
So
but the problem with that is if United had their best team with them and they didn't do well, the so-called second string team wouldn't have done much better. But my counter question to that is, United still fielded a pretty good team, and I thought Tuanzebe played pretty well. This is the so-called second string team had the likes of Martial and the likes of Mata in there. This was a good United team if you just
yeah,
take
yeah,
it
of
on the
course,
merit of themselves.
yeah, yeah.
So my next question to Sid is, what was the one thing that was worrying for me, that when I looked at the game, was how toothless United were when they went behind by a goal. What did you think of that in the second half, especially?
No, more than us being toothless, I was taken aback by the mentality on the day and the formation Mourinho went in with. I mean, Mkhitaryan was playing effectively left wing back slash left back. Oh, sorry, right, I think, and Mata was on the other side playing wing back, or uh, a left back or whatever that was. And why would he go with a six at the back, two head of the six, and then Martial up front? I just didn't understand that. I mean, he effectively had the same formation against Chelsea when we won, but the players in the position of Mkhitaryan and Mata were 15 yards ahead of where they played. So I to till the date, I still haven't understood how what Mourinho's thought process was going into that game. I mean, no one can say that Arsenal were great on the day. It was just us being poor, and us going in with a very defensive mindset, which wasn't required. I think ever since
So
the City game that we lost, I mean, we could have gone all out and gone for the 3 points, and we haven't done that in the last three games: City, Swansea, and Arsenal, and it shows in the number of points that we've collected.
yeah, and so this is another, against all the top five teams in the rest of the top six. The United haven't scored a goal away from home. It's been 4 years since Ferguson retired. So Shannon, what do you think of what do you think of the current replacement, and how is this from a long term perspective? Have Do United have the right man to continue his legacy?
I think so. I mean, I am not doubting Mourinho's long term status at United at all. I mean, you have to, after all the damage done by Moyes, and then somewhat recovery by Van Hal. It was, this season was definitely going to be a rebuild in terms of Mourinho coming in and implementing his ideas and the way he wants the teams to play. And we saw a lot of that in I would say, first 3 quarters of a season, right? United were always on the front foot at home. Even away, we were like compact and creating opportunities. It's just been, if you see, it's just been over the last maybe month or so when these injuries kicked in, where we essentially were dropping center backs like flies, and Pogba was out, and Ibra being out. So it was, I think, more like Mourinho realized at that point that this is just a firefight. He just has to make damage limitation, and as I said, just have Europa League as his
Yeah,
priority. But again, it stems from the struggles of not putting teams to bed in the first half of the season. But for to answer
so
your question, for long term, I think Mourinho is definitely the right man. He was backed
nice.
previous summer by Woodward. He got 4 players, and you wouldn't argue about each any of them being failures. Eric Bailly has been exceptional. Ibra delivered his worth in goals. Pogba has been quietly effective. Probably will see more of him next season. And Mkhitaryan, I guess lately has been jaded, but he had really good 4-5 months. So I would
So
say, yeah, again, the same thing would be next season if Ed Woodward goes all out and backs Mourinho to get his players that he wants. You'll be seeing a pretty different United for next season.
exciting times ahead. The one team that actually was very fluid and very Guardiola-like was City. Sid, how dependent are this City team on an amazing David Silva?
He's one of those that'll be remembered forever, but doesn't get that credit right now. I mean, he's amazing. It shows how all those 10 dots connect when he's the 11th player on the field. He has those extra pair of eyes behind his back and on the sides, and he's able to string those passes together. It's just beautiful to watch. And that such a player is actually essential for a Guardiola like system where he has those two runners with that striker ahead of Silva. So it was great to see that 5-0 thrashing. uh, but more than that, I mean, the only concern that I have is that how is this system actually going to work in the Premier League in the long run? I mean, no one's actually been successful playing, this way of football or this system. But then again, we've actually witnessed Conte doing it in a very brand new way with the 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3. So if Guardiola can actually get his players and do this, do what he did at Barca or at Bayern, it'll be beautiful as a Premier League viewer and a supporter, but not as a United fan.
So, so nice. And then quickly reviewing or previewing next week's fixtures. Of course, the highlight is Man United versus Tottenham Hotspurs. Do you think that's another game that Mourinho is just going to give up on, or are we going to see the United that turned up against Chelsea and absolutely shattered them? Shannon, any quick thoughts on that game? Do you think United can take some points away from Spurs?
I don't see it, to be honest. I think again it'll be damage limitation, and personally, I'm just hoping we don't get spanked 3-4-5-0. For sure, Mourinho is gonna play his best 11 against Celta Vigo at home at Old Trafford. But yeah, I just see that it's going to be a weekend side again at Spurs, and Spurs being trying to get salvage some pride. Will go
Nice.
all out and might rip us a new one.
Yeah, it's the last
So
game. It's the last game at White Hart Lane, so I'm just dreading, the way Spurs are going to turn out, and the fans.
So Sid, do you think so? Tony Pulis away from home is always a nightmare. Do you think Chelsea can wrap up the title this Friday?
For sure, I don't think there's been one team that actually that Chelsea actually fear, and they have nothing to fear right now. Uh, I mean, the title's pretty much wrapped up. So Tony Pulis or not, I mean, Chelsea is going to go all out, and we can expect Tony Pulis to be Tony Pulis, and uh, park the bus essentially. So yeah, I mean, Hazard, Costa, Pedro, Fabregas, we can and Alonso, we can expect them to bomb up and down and secure the win and the title for Chelsea.
Moving on to the Champions League, has there ever been a less expected second leg of the Champions League for in a semi-final stage as big as this. Shannon, do you think we can see any surprises? Madrid leading 3-0 and Juventus at home where they never concede, leading 2-0 against a vibrant Monaco team. What do you think? Any surprises there to see?
No surprises. Madrid Juventus final and Gigi Buffon to get his first Champions League.
Nice.
Short
What
and
do you think,
simple.
Sid?
Short and simple. I want to go along with Shannon, but if we are to expect any surprises, I think it might be at the hands of Monaco. I don't see Real Madrid losing against Atletico.
Nice. And the last European game of interest looks like Ajax would win, but do you think United can close out Celta Vigo and go to the finals?
Hope so. Celta Vigo, they are just middling in, mid-table, and they rested pretty much, I think, their whole first team, maybe 9 out of 11 starters during their weekend game. So, yeah, United obviously will have their first team out there at Old Trafford, and Mourinho said something really interesting after the previous game. I think just to, rouse the atmosphere before the game. He said, if Old Trafford wants us to win, we usually win, which hasn't been the case in the Premier League this season. But he's just riling up the fans, setting them up so that they back the team at Old Trafford. So, yeah, I would see United going through, and probably I can't call the other game because it just seems both their teams' defenses are terrible. Ajax scored whenever they wanted to. Leon got a goal back. Leon came back against Besiktas, I think, previous round. So tough to call that one. But let's see, it will be United against someone. Hopefully, would touch.
What do you think, Sid?
Yeah, with all our eggs in one very
Tiny
big
basket.
basket. Yeah, I don't know, big or tiny, but yeah, with all our eggs in one basket, I think Mourinho should produce a Mourinho big time European performance and close out the game and just move on to the finals.
Yeah,
You-
it would be funny. It would be sad if United don't close out the Europa and have to be in the Europa League again next year.
It's interesting. Also, just to finish on this, I think we have all our players back, including Pogba, Herrera, and the defense back. So no excuses going into the Europa League tie. Everyone's fresh.
Nice. So
how
go ahead,
ironic.
Shannon.
No, just the last comment. I hope it
Yeah,
doesn't
go
bite
ahead.
me in the butt. But how ironic would it be if Celta Vigo get a final minute goal and their managers go running, down the touchline or something.
Stop being so negative. Stop being so negative. Let's move on to
It
the
will be
next
like Mourinho flashback from Porto days.
next topic, Albert.
So, to wrap up the pod, one final question. We look at one transfer rumor each pod at least, and the one that caught my eye this week was Sandro from Juventus moving to Manchester City. He won't come cheap. Juventus are hard sellers, but Sid, what do you think of this move? City definitely need two wing backs, and Sandro seems to fit the bill very very perfectly.
I don't know if he fits the bill. I mean, he's going to cost what 50 million, but I mean, he's a great player. He's done very well to reach where he is. I mean, it's not easy to be in contention for the first choice left back for Brazil, with the likes of Maxwell from PSG,
Marcelo.
Marcelo from Madrid, Felipe Luis from Atletico. So he's been selected apparently in the squad. So I mean, it speaks volumes of what he's done and where he's reached. Another interesting thing to note: he's created the most number of chances in the Serie A. When you compare him to any defender in the league, he has the third most chances created for Juventus, I think, if I'm not wrong, after Dybala and Pogba, I think. So he's done brilliantly well. City did try to sign him last year, and he was they put in a bid for about 20-25 million, but Juventus weren't ready to sell him because they'd only signed him 12 months back. And I don't blame them. He's been great for them, and his stock is doubled now. And we all know how well Juventus do as sellers. So there's strong rumors of Juventus talking to Felipe Luis and trying to get him. So if they're able to secure a deal for Felipe Luis, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't take 50 million for a 26-year-old defender, even though he's in his prime. But yes, as far as fitting in at City, I mean, honestly, any defender fits in well at City right now, considering how poorly everyone's performed so far. Especially the likes of Clichy, Kolarov, and Otamendi. Those are just aging legs.
Insightful comments from our very own Siddharth Taroras. That brings an end to today's podcast. Thank you all for joining us. Once again, we look forward to your feedback. Like us, subscribe, and uh, go look forward to another episode soon. Thank you again. Signing out. Three wise men. Goodbye.